Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Business Success Series presented by Manulife, Strengths-Based Leadership, how to maximize your leadership potential by focusing on your strengths. My name is Ian McLean. I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we do live and work on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, as we seek a renewed relationship based on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As participants in today's virtual event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the same respect and opportunity, regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope you'll join us in fostering a positive environment here today that is a safe and welcoming space for all. We know there is more that we can do, and we are committed to listening, learning, and growing as we go. Today's session would not be possible without the continued support of our sponsors and partners. So a special thank you to our title sponsor of the Business Success Series, Manulife, our platinum sponsor for the series, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, and April sponsor, the Region of Waterloo. These organizations are committed to supporting our local economy and providing businesses with the resources and tools they need to thrive. Just before the session starts, I would like to take a moment just to go over a few quick reminders. Please do ensure that your microphone is muted throughout the presentation so we can reduce any background noise. If you have a tech-related question, please comment in the chat section, and a representative of our team will get back to you right away. If you have a question for today's speaker, they'll be gathered throughout the session by myself, and our speaker will do our best, or I'll make sure to do the best to get that question into the mix. Certainly, they'll be answered following the presentation if we don't get to it during today's session. All attendees will be sent a recording of today's presentation. It will also be made available on the Greater KW Chamber website. I'd like to now take a moment to invite Paul Medeiros, Managing Director with NSF International, to introduce today's guest. Paul.
Thank you, Ian. The Region of Waterloo is proud to be this month's presenting sponsor of the Business Success Series. Today's topic, and in fact, this entire series really resonates with me. This past year, in partnership with the region and the chambers, NSF's COVID-19 ambassadors visited thousands of small and mid-sized businesses in the region to help them adapt to and operate in the COVID-19 pandemic. So this work really hit home with me, how important small and mid-sized businesses are to our community. So with that said, I had the privilege of introducing today's guest, Michael Snyders. Mike is the president of Future Focus, Inc., where he has spent the last 20 years working alongside small and mid-sized organizations as an advisor, trainer, and coach in the areas of business strategy, talent development, and leadership training. Mike and his team at Future Focus launched their leadership training programs in 2019, which have impacted over 50 companies and over 500 leaders in our community. The team at Future Focus are driven by having a positive impact on creating better leadership habits for its participants and measurable impact on its clients' business performance and culture. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll pass it back to Ian.
Well, thanks, Paul, and we certainly appreciate our relationship with NSF and the work that we've done collectively to support businesses during COVID and the ambassador program that your group, your team led, which has been so impactful for so many businesses. So thank you for joining us today. Listen, Mike, I want to start with, we've known each other a long time. We wanted to touch base today about that. I think one of the things that have come out of COVID, at least from my perspective, is that there isn't anybody who isn't a leader in your organization, because everyone's had to step up in different ways to do new things that we wouldn't have imagined in January or February of 2020. We didn't do many of the things that we're doing right now. That's not all that hasn't been accomplished because the leadership of any organization has done it all. It's their people have adapted, stepped up, and looked at the challenge before them and have delivered. So it is certainly a team concept, but it got me thinking in terms of strengths-based leadership, and that's what you focus on at Future Focus. And I want to take a minute so people really understand what that means. So can you explain the concept of strength-based leadership and who it refers to in an organization?
Sure. As you said, we're all leaders. And as I explained, strength-based leadership, it really does apply to everybody in the organization, and it is really focused on how do you recognize and develop and grow people within their strength zones. So if you look at traditional ways, performance reviews have been done, assessments have been done, coaching has been done. It's typically focused on here's your strengths, here's your weaknesses or challenges. And through that, your areas of development, your areas of opportunity for growth are to fix your weaknesses. That's been the kind of the traditional way. Whereas the strength-based approach is really about how do we recognize and create opportunities to build on an individual's strengths. So it's creating opportunities for yourself and your team to be more active within your strength zone. The more that we're active in our strength zone, the higher we perform, the better we are at what we do, the more engaged we are with what we do. And then it's not that we ignore our weaknesses or our challenges. It's really about how do we then mitigate potentially our weaknesses or our challenges. For instance, through, can those tasks be automated? Can they be delegated to other team members that have strengths in those areas that we're weak within? Or can they be eliminated? So how do we shift people more towards their strength zone, which gives a much greater impact on them, their lives, as well as on their role within the organization? So an example of that would be, I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, just an example of that would be, I'm not an attention to detail person. And if I get so bogged down in and everything else like that, but I have my operations manager is extremely detail oriented and extremely good at that, and can probably do something that would take me 8 hours to do, could probably do it in about an hour. And I'm not procrastinating, I'm not tied down to it and everything else that, and she can do a much better job than I can at that, right? So it's really identifying with how our strengths all align with each other. So
now I want to drill down a little bit because I think there's always you work with small and medium-sized business. I think that's important to note, because the larger organization you did, the thinner your job functions become, more administrative, more business development, more finance. In our small businesses, we're doing a little bit of everything. I know in your business, you're doing, try not to, but you are doing a lot of different things. So when we talk about that strength-based leadership and say, okay, well, we want to focus on what you're good at, as opposed to trying to improve what you don't like to do. You end up procrastinating because you don't like those functions. So, and I'm with you. I'm not, I think the administrative part of ticking boxes is not my strength, but we all need to do it to some degree. We can't not do any of it. So this isn't saying that in focusing on what my strengths or your strengths would be, which may be leadership or strategic planning or partnerships development, that may be where our strength is, but it doesn't mean you don't have any of those detailed things. It's about managing and saying, put more of your time in the things you're strengthening or that you're good at. And for those less things that you don't prefer, you may still have to do them, but it's how you work them into the rest of your day. Yeah. Because I think people get tied up and saying, oh, well, I don't have to do administrative stuff. Everyone's got to do administrative stuff, but it's like, what is the core piece of your day? Am I doing 7, 8 or 9 hours of my day on the things that I'm good at, and as little as possible, but I know I still have to do those? How do you kind of get that message through to both the leadership team of groups you're working with and the people that are in there?
And I really liked how you started out with that, where, it's not just about what our strengths are, it's what strengthens us. It's how do we enjoy what we're doing? Are we engaged with what we're doing? And that's a very important aspect. So if you look at Marcus Buckingham, which I'm a very, very big fan of, he wrote the book Stand Out 2, and he's got a new book that he's releasing right now called Love and Work. But I always believe that my strengths come from the things that I love, the things that I'm interested in, I'm passionate about. Because the more we're interested in something, the more we're passionate about something, the more connected we are with it, the more synaptic connections that we create in our brains. We want to study it more. We will read articles on it more often. We will watch the best people that do it. We will, our antenna goes up every time we hear anything around those things, right? So what we're interested in, what we're passionate about, leads to our strength, because our strength comes from those connections. And actually, from a brain perspective, it's the synaptic connections that are more often engaged with the things that we're interested in and things like that creates more knowledge, skill, and capability within those things. So with that said, there's a really easy, and I love this, it's an easy exercise that we get our leaders to do within our leadership training. Is it's called Love It, Loathe It activity, and I can't take credit for it. This is something that Marcus Buckingham did, and I love it. So we incorporated it into what we do. But if you were to look at your day, your week, your month, and all the things that you do, and if you were put it on a list, so kind of put 2 columns, it might be 3 columns, but have one column that's love it, one column that's loathe it, and you might put a third one that's kind of neutral. So things that I neither love nor loathe, but they're parts of my day, parts of the things that I do. So if you were to take everything you do and write it into one of those 3 categories, I love doing this. If I could do this all day long, I'd be engaged and I'm excited and I'd be good at what I do and everything else that. This is what gets me up in the morning. This is what gives me purpose. This is what excites me. And it is also where they will add the best value to their business, to their team, to their group. The loathed activities are the things that you might procrastinate on, or you're maybe not very good at it. Or, if I never had to do that again, it would be too soon. And that's, again, those attention to detail things, right? As far as for me, anyway, personally. So if now, as you were saying before, is that we still have to do loathed activities because there's no job that's going to be a perfect match to everything that we're just going to be strong in all the time. However, if you were to do that simple exercise, now it takes some time to get those activities into the chart, but if you were to take that and look at what's the 3 highest things that get in my way on the loathed side, whether it's the 3 things that take up most of my time, the 3 things that I procrastinate on the most, whatever it happens to be, and then find out, how do I reduce those 3 things? Can I recognize within my team people that are strong in those areas, and can I work with them, coach them, and delegate to them towards their strengths? Can I eliminate it, or is there an automation that can be put into place so that I don't have to do that? And then be very diligent around that time that you save on those activities, is you put it towards those love it activities where it's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more impact. It's going to give you a higher level of performance and a bigger impact on your team and on your organization. So that, I think it's such a simple exercise, but it's probably one of the highest impact exercises that someone could do, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I guess that the important part of going through that exercise is the things that you're not as passionate about. You either say, can you eliminate them, or get them to someone who is their strength there, or automate them. The important part of that is, if you're going to go through the exercise and take the time to do that you're taking the time you're saving and putting it towards, let's talk about that part of it, taking that and saying, look, I'm saving an hour a day because I'm not doing admin like expense or look, I want to automate where I'm going and the calls I'm doing. And we see this in construction as an example, like where there's now automation on GPS on trucks, so you don't have to fill in the report saying I went from this job site to that job site. So there's a lot of automation that takes some of that paperwork away. But I have to imagine that this is all in service of saying, Mike is really good at business development, or he's really good at developing relationships in the community, which is good for getting new clients. Therefore, that's what we want Mike to be focused on. Like, do the things that you're good at and sort of fill you up. So the part about eliminating or automating or delegating would be the three things you hate to do. The important part is the time that you save should go towards those. Like, don't get sucked up in other stuff. Is like you're going through the exercise so you can do more of what you're really good at.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how does that work? And I'm interested. Like, it's one thing if you own your company, you've built your company, and it's one thing that Mike does that. But how would this lead? And you talked about 50 companies, probably 500 people have gone through this program just since 2019, as an example. But you're dealing with your senior people or your leadership group in your organization, whether that's 1 or 2 or 10 in your organization. Is it different by job function, or is this the same exercise, regardless of whether you're finance, operations, business development? Is it different?
And we find just overall in leadership training and but also specifically around this is that it's the principles apply regardless of what function you are or what level of the organization you are. You might be a frontline employee or you might right through to supervisory, right up to the CEO or the owner of the organization. We all put our pants on in the same way. We all get stressed and strained with the same things. Like we are, our time, we don't have enough time. We're fighting fires all the time. We know that we should be coaching our people a little bit more often, but we're not but we're not. So what gets in the way? Well, time gets in the way or different things like that. But like all of us, whether it be manufacturing, technology, professional services, nonprofit organizations, regardless of your discipline that you're putting into play, this is something that can be applied across the board. When you look at it from a team perspective, and if you can encourage your team to get involved with an exercise like this, it can be highly impactful for both the leader as well as for the team that's within that leadership. So as an example, I program development, like developing our programs and everything else that I struggle with it. We create really great programs, but I struggle with certain aspects of it. So I would get like when it comes into actually creating the slide decks, creating the training manuals and everything else that I would procrastinate on it. I would get sucked into it. It would take me hours and hours and hours to do. So what I defined for myself was I'm really strong at creating the vision around what a module should look like and what do we want to achieve in that. And I'm really good on the back end of really fine tuning it and working with the team to get it so that it's just right. But I have 2 facilitators that are in my group that are fantastic and quick and highly efficient at creating the content. So we do what's called Mike's rave, that's what they call it. And I just go off and I just start talking and I just go into my vision and what do I want to do and everything else like that. And we record it so that they're catching the nuances of what I'm saying. And then they go off and they start creating the framework for it and start creating the content for it and everything else like that. And they just come back and we fine tune it. But it's utilizing the shared skills that we have and the shared things that interest us. So that allows me to then more focus, like you said, I love the business development side. I love the business strategy side. I love the ability to be here today and speaking and passing on knowledge and my passions. I get, like what we do as an organization is driven by my passion. Like, I grew up wanting to be like help people be the best that they can be. That's been my purpose all the way since I was in college. And as a leadership training company, we get to do exactly that. And for the most part, I love everything that we do, but there's certain things that I don't like doing. But I have team members that are exceptional at doing those things. And we talk about strengths and all the time with each other.
Well, let me ask this question because it's connected. The reason you do some of this leadership development and try and break old habits and create new ones is all in service of how do I make my business better, my organization better. And we all struggle. Like, you know, in a strange way, COVID has forced, certainly in an organization that's 138 years old like we are, there are things that you assume that you have to do, right? And so, and one of the pieces was we always traditionally did like in-person events. We didn't do it like we weren't stretching ourselves for how we would do things differently in what has fast becoming a digital electronic age. Well, COVID forced us to do, we've had 2 years of doing everything online and virtual. I'm not sure, and I can for sure say we don't want another pandemic to force us to keep changing. But I think the you know, when you're forced to change, you can change. Does this, and I guess I want to come back to, is this something that allows you to become more constantly evolutionary in terms of how you do things? Like it allow you to come back and say, well, we don't have to do that every 6 months. Is this a new way of thinking, of saying, look, I hate doing that. It takes me time. I'm getting bogged down on it. And in real time kind of create, you know, like who's the right person to be doing that? Because we all have, the other thing is we have traditional senses of in HR saying, there's Ian, here's his job description, this is what he does.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't work anymore because things are moving fast. And there could be things that traditionally I would do that are better served other people doing. Does this idea of strengths-based leadership say, hey, at all times we should be figuring out who's the right person to be doing this, and it won't neatly fit into the boxes that we have set up at that particular time?
Yeah, well, and I think you're right. With small and mid-sized organizations, we're more broad in terms of what we do. You know, on every one of our job descriptions, it says and other assigned activities, right? And then in larger organizations, you become more specialized and you drill deeper into a particular discipline. Now, hopefully, that particular discipline is what your strengths are based on. I mean, like, you know, hopefully you're in that convocation that you love to do. But in this can apply in every situation, but you kind of really, like when you're talking about leadership habits or any types of habits, and hopefully you, and as an example, those that are watching today, if you actually go out and physically do this, so you do the love it, loathe it, scoring and everything else like that, and you look at, if you put it into action, you will retain it better. It will create more of a, hey, that really worked for me, so therefore I want to do it again, and things like that. And that's where habit comes from, right? So like our program as a whole is really designed around that, where we do short segments of training, but then we focus on, here's 2 weeks of you practicing it and an accountability to putting it into action and making it real within your life, within your organization, within your role. And then coaching around that. So it's establishing that pattern of put things into action, see how they work for you. And this is a relatively simple activity. But when people walk out of here, and I think it is like, this is an activity that I would constantly do. I would look at, so when I was talking about it earlier, where it's like, look for those top 3 things that are getting in your way or that you loathe doing and that you spend the most redundant time on, and then solve for those in whatever way that is, right? But as you move forward and you kind of get into this new routine of, I'm doing more things that I love to do, I'm being more purposeful, I enjoy my job more, I'm more engaged, having more impact, and I'm spending less time in these areas. To then, like 3 months later, go back to that and revisit and say, okay, what are still some of the things that I loathe doing today? So if you look at lean manufacturing as an example, or Kaizen, it's the same idea, right? The true organizations that really bring lean manufacturing into play are the ones that set a mindset around continuous improvement. And continuous improvement is not that we just go directly to being perfect as an organization or in our quality cost delivery. It's the evolution of it. What are the biggest root causes? What are the biggest things that get in our way? How do we solve for those? And then you're continuing to drive towards a higher level of performance through that consistency of going, what's the most important things for us to work on? And then what's the next most important things to work on? And that's what drives continuous improvement for organizations. It's also what drives continuous improvement for us as employees or as leaders.
So let me ask this.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I find it a fascinating discussion because I think that especially with the smaller the company is, the less likely you're going to be able to say, well, I loathe doing that, therefore I'm not going to do it. Like there's not enough bodies to do that. But I think recognizing what you don't like to do should be a signal to, when do I do it? How do I do it as quickly as possible? Can I automate it? So that it becomes less and less of my day, and it becomes less and less of a, gosh, I really hate doing that. Like, I hate doing paperwork. I just hate it. I've always hated it when I was a salesperson. I don't like doing it. It's not hard. When I get focused on it, I can do it, but it's not the first, second, or 10th thing I think about when I wake up in the morning, but it needs to be done. And some of it has to be done by me. So I guess that's the question is we go through the love it and loathe and say, geez, I hate doing paperwork. I hate doing paperwork. Okay. Does this also get you a sense that even when you go through that exercise saying, I know I still need to do it. So with me and my small business as a leader saying, hey, we all hate, some of us hate paperwork, but we still got to do it. Here's some tips about, or we're going to bring something in to automate it so it becomes less of your day. Some of the tricks that whether it's you or someone else that's advising would say, hey, do it first thing in the morning, get it out of the way at 8:30. Just say you're going to do your paperwork from, like there must be some tricks where you say, and I guess the theme of this question is, you're never going to get rid of all the things you don't like to do, even going through that exercise. I assume it's about managing through and saying, get through that stuff so you can really fill your bucket on the things that make you excited or me excited or any of your staff excited.
Yeah, actually, and you used a great example, and that's actually an example that I use quite a lot. So you look at sales team, business development, or sales associates, or different things like that. They are driven by certain things. They are driven and excited about, and they love the win, getting the deal, dealing with the people, being out there in meetings, interacting and engaging those relationships. That's what they love to do. They hate the paperwork. You talk to almost anybody that does business development or sales, the paperwork, but your sales director or your sales manager needs that paperwork because that's what drives the strategy and the process around sales and business development. So why not have your salespeople supported by a sales assistant? And that assistant or that person is an administrative team member that collects the data, that does, puts some of the reports together, that takes some of that burden of paperwork off the sales team. And they're extremely organized and they're extremely data driven, and they help to build this data and analytics that are necessary to build the strategy around sales. And you're giving more time to the sales team to do what they love to do what they're good at. And that's engaging in relationships, building business development, building business relationships, and going after new business. So when you so that's a great example. I would say that the most courageous leaders I would say that there's 5 things that we should do. 5 things that we should do in terms of being able to kind of bring this idea of strength-based leadership into your team. The first one would be, I would share myself, I would be open about my loathe it activities and everything else, and what are the things that I'm trying to do to get more and more into the areas that I love. They'll actually probably recognize those things because they'll see those things that I do really, really well. They'll actually identify with them and everything else like that. And they probably don't want me doing the things that I don't like doing. So first off is share from yourself. The second one is to encourage and support your team in doing their own love it and loathe it activities, so that they start to identify with what strengthens me, what weakens me, and things like that. Now you have to make sure that as you do that, that you're letting them know that this does not mean that you don't do anything that you don't like to do. This is just how do we work as a team to continue to develop around strength-based. So you got to be very clear about that. The third thing I would do is create opportunities for open conversation within your team around the collaborative strengths of the group. And one of the things about the standout assessment says there's a really great part of it where it's got a section where it's come to me when. And that means come to me when you need a relationship built on, as an example. And this is what you would send out to their team, because it's really identifying with the rest of the team. This is what I'm really good at. This is what I love to do. Come to me when you need support around those things. So your team then starts to look at the collective strengths. The fourth one I would do is recognize where your team's strengths can help in the activities that weaken you as well. So that's the opportunity that you can delegate. That's the opportunity that you can work alongside them and identify with, how do I become my best self? And how do you become your best self? And how do we collaborate together to strengthen that? And then the fifth one would be when we do performance reviews, when we do performance development, that should be a process, and that should be a process that ties also to an individual's strengths and talents, and the things that strengthen them. So as we identify with what strengthens them that weaken, or what might weaken them or whatever, when we're doing stretch goals or development plans or assigning projects to our team, look at the things that strengthen them, look at the things that they're talented in, and try to align the things that we need within our business or within our team to the things that people are really engaged with and good at. And you'll find that they'll more than likely achieve those objectives a lot faster and a lot more meaningfully. They'll do it in a really good way. They'll be more engaged in what they're doing because they're interested in what it is that you've assigned to them or you've given them as a development opportunity. So that's probably the 5 things that I would do to actively put this into action as a leader with my team.
So, and that's a good one. So whether
Sorry,
it's
it was very long, but
no, it's fascinating. I think one of the things is, whether it's us at the chamber, we've got a new program that we're putting together, or a new event, or you at any business that's watching right now saying, we either got a new client, we got a project we got to work on. Is some of this sounds to me like looking at the work that you have to do in a couple of different ways, as opposed to just saying, oh, we've got to get this done, and so does reports, and so on does. Like, yeah. It almost sounds like you're looking at the tasks that need, like, what's the goal? Obviously, you meet the need of the client, but then looking at it from a task base, like, what are the things we need to do? Because some of the projects, if it was months, there's a lot of administration that would be in there saying, who's doing the admin for 6 months or a year while we're on this project? There could be a combination of people that aren't going to take everyone's full attention. So how do you divide up the communications function, the finance function, the client interaction piece, or the front facing, if it's more of a front facing time limited, more retail or hospitality, like front facing piece. It sounds to me like you got to look at it a couple of different ways so that you get the right mix of people, and that the tasks are being done, and you've got the right people with the energy and the excitement for the things that fill them, and you don't get stuck in this thing of saying, well, in my case, I've got lots of talented folks, but if they get bogged down on the admin, or all they do is admin and don't get the work done, I haven't got the right people on it. Is that, I mean, you got to kind of almost take a couple of cracks at saying, here's this new thing we're doing, or reviewing an old thing, and look at it a couple of different ways. Is that what you're getting at there?
Well, so when I do performance development, and this is also kind of how we teach it as well, is we look more at what, like, so when it comes to their goals and setting their goals and everything else, that we set stretch goals that, and I say to the team member, what around us needs to be fixed. So let's say, for instance, we've been using this Excel model that's been archaic. It was built 20 years ago. Takes us forever to get through that process on a monthly basis, and everything else like that, because it's just broken, and it's not efficient or anything else like that. Having an individual that's really good at Excel modeling, as an example, I would want to, during our performance kind of setting goals and expectations and everything else like that, is you're really good at Excel modeling and you are really creative with it and you love doing it. Can you create a new Excel model to do this particular function that's going to take us 20 minutes to do instead of 8 hours to do? So what within our organ, so there's, from a project-based perspective, how are we improving our team, our organization, the way we do things through the strengths that we have within the group? But then there's also, when you're assigning like projects, so if a project-based organization where, you know, we have to deliver on this client initiative or whatever, is again, looking at, you know, I've got my project, you know, the project manager really good at keeping everybody on task and really good at being able to look at the macro level and how does that kind of fit into the functionality and the action plans and everything else like that. So, you know, of course, there, you know, that's that particular skill set that you need. And then, but it's bringing the people together that have the right strengths and the right talents, that, you know, this is an aspect of this project or of this client activity that you would really sing in.
Mhm.
So there's a saying that we use, and it's something about the best conductors reach for the magic in the player behind the music. So it's not just about being able to follow the music, it's about engaging the magic. It's about engaging the individuals around the things that they love. And if you and that is where you're tying into their success and you're tying into their strengths. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. When you as a group are continuously talking and sharing around strengths and focused on that, it just becomes part of the DNA of how you do things.
We've all heard, and you know, you're in the leadership and talent business. We hear about it at the chamber, every one of us. You know, people saying, I can't hire, I can't find the right people.
Oh my God.
We've got
Yeah.
job openings. And this is across functions. So when we and the team are talking with folks in hospitality, tourism, they're not even fully open because they can't fully open because they don't got enough people. Manufacturers, professional services, you take it, everyone across the board, you know, Communitech and the founders and the tech companies, everyone's short. We can't find people.
For people.
Is this, you know, I think the impact of sort of looking at leadership development and investing in people, or listening and actually getting from people what excites them. I would think that this is something that I think good businesses and many in Waterloo region have been leaders in this, but is this even going to become more important? Like, this is not a short-term talent issue. We had job shortages or job openings before COVID. We went through COVID and you'd think, okay, well, you know, do we still have we have a huge problem coming out of it, and it's not going to be short term. So is this the idea of saying you've got to invest in people, send the signal that you're interested and invested in what drives them and what will excite them? Because for small businesses, and I guess this is the piece you have to pair together. We're small organizations, and while we might grow, it's not like it'll be, you go from this to it won't be as linear as if you were a big business. You know, you start as salesperson, then you're sales manager, and then you're VP of sales. We don't have that in small businesses, but you got to keep them excited about their own development.
Yes.
And that you're having that conversation. Is this part of this, is one of those ways that you foster an environment of retaining the talent you already have?
Yeah, so definitely around retaining the talent that you all already have, and but also one of our partners that one of your partners that is a, I think, your platinum sponsor, which is Immigration Partnership, right? There's fantastic. There is talent available. It's hard to access. It's hard to, and there's opportunities. And I would contact Immigration Partnership to find out how do I tap into that access. You're right. There's such a huge demand for great employees, and everybody's hiring. Every one of our clients is actively pursuing and can't find enough people. Everybody within my business network, the same thing. And so I think, so one is I would definitely look at our immigration population that we have here. There's a fantastic level of talent that's available and everything else like that, and reach out to those organizations that can help you access that. But number two, so, and looking at that as an example as well, is that they're your future as well, right? And as we invest in their ability to become great leaders and everything else like that, you're bringing a lot of core competency and a lot of really engaged people into their career development path. So it's not just about hiring, it's also about then, as we hire them, how do we start to stretch them towards the things that they love to do, towards the things that they're good at, and stretch them in capacities of leadership? That's where your future is, I think.
Well, I think on the talent gaps that we know are there, and you hear this from the universities, you hear it from the sector leaders. There's the recruiting part. There's the retaining part too, which is equally as important. The best employee that you have is probably a good one that you keep. And you never know if you're, I think it's safe to assume that everyone will be having people whispering in their ear that there's another job available for them.
Yep.
I fully expect that I've got a talented staff in the chamber, all of them. So what are the things that we're doing to make sure that they see the value in what they're doing, and that they're getting that personal development and are feeling fulfilled, I think is really important. And then maybe there's a couple more questions I have. Does this make a difference whether you're, as an example, a not-for-profit, a charity, a small business, or a larger business? I mean, this is applicable of saying this is going to be the same issue that we all face.
Absolutely. Now, I think in a small, mid-sized organization and in not-for-profits, you have a little bit more of a familial culture, and that ability to freely, especially if it's led by the top, to create this trusting atmosphere where we can talk about strengths, where we can talk about the things that strengthen us, and we are now more, and this is some pretty simple strategies that you can really get a significant impact on engaging those people, where they can be offered $3 an hour more and stuff like that. They won't want to go because they love what they do and they're respected for it by their leader, and they are put in development opportunities that are going to grow them in that respect. So they're not going to leave for a bit higher of a wage or anything else like that. This is a simple thing that you can do that really is going to significantly impact culture. Corporations, a little bit, yes, it definitely works. I mean, it's more kind of, it's working within the pockets of the leaders that really kind of focus on strength-based leadership.
And I don't know whether you have an answer to this, but I'll ask it anyways. Part of what we're all doing is, when we are looking for people, is to, how do we give the best indication of what our culture is like? Because it's unless you happen to know the organization, it's two-dimensional to see a piece of paper that says, here's what we do as an example, the Chamber of Commerce, here's what the role might be. How do you kind of give that sense of that we are, we welcome diversity, equity, inclusion, and that we believe in those things, because those things are as important as anything else right now. People want to know the type of business that they're working for, but also this part of, will they know before they start, or many will want to know, I guess is the way to describe this. am I going to be supported in my own development, not just in achieving the goals for the organization itself? So, how do we kind of put this in the front window that this is an important element of who we are?
There's several different ways to do that. I'm going to get to one that I think is probably the most successful. Like it's your Glassdoor ratings. It's what are you presenting to the world around you? What are our past employees saying? What are your current employees saying? Are they excited to, and everything else like that? How is your presence on social media and things like that? Not just from a business perspective, but also from an employer perspective. But I would say that if I get them to the interviews, if I've got people coming into the interviews and I have members of my team that are active in those interviews, they're excited about working with our company, they love the development opportunities that they've gotten and everything else like that, they're going to talk about that. And so whoever you're trying to hire is actively hearing from people on your team that love being here and love the fact that they're encouraged for development and different things like that. So if you're creating this type of culture, I would actively engage some of your employees to be in that recruiting process.
And I'm just looking at the chat here. Charlene from the Waterloo Wellington Workforce Planning Board had asked a question around retention. I just pulled this up, so it's a version of what we just talked about. But in the survey that I think it's the Employer One survey that they do regularly, 30% of those employers are worried about retention, and have identified that in specifically not having somewhere for that great employee you want to keep to necessarily move up because you don't have the levels, like the hierarchies. And so how does, maybe reinforce, I think you sort of touched on this, that this sort of model of incenting people to kind of really become good at what they really love to do is, I mean, I assume that's part of it, of saying, look, if I'm fulfilled doing what I'm doing and I can kind of be creative because I'm allowed that creativity to say I can do it in a different way, or I can feel as though I've got that leadership in their existing role. Yeah. That's almost the equivalent of saying you've taken onto that that next level. I mean, is that what you want to have? Is that everyone knows that they are both as a group but individually responsible for them being excited about the work that they're doing and doing things in a way that really fills them up?
Yeah, for sure. And unfortunately, in every organization, as you go up levels and everything else like that, it becomes smaller and smaller population as you go up, right? So not everybody has the opportunity that they're going to be able to move to that next level anytime soon. And if you look at some of the younger generation, a lot of them want to kind of move up really fast, right? And they get disappointed if they're not. But when you show that you're focused on what strengthens them, what they love to do, that you can do this all day, and the more that they're doing the things that they enjoy doing and that they're good at, the more successful they'll be, the better the opportunity that they will have for development and for growth as in their careers. Creating that incentive, not necessarily to say you've got this new role or you could get this new role if you toe the line or whatever, but creating that opportunity where you're showing that we constantly are trying to invest in you, trying to focus on how do we help you work within your best self. That's going to resonate with them. And so let's say you do have that individual that wants to grow up and wants to move forward and don't find that they're moving up quick enough within the organization. So they go to another organization to go to a promoted job. But if you created that atmosphere here, they'll very quickly want to come back, because they'll go, it wasn't worth the extra 10 grand that I was getting there. I was really valued here.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, we're quickly running out of time. I think maybe what would be the recap if you were going to leave people with the 2 or 3 things from our conversation today to get them thinking in this new way, which I think is really important. With the post-pandemic, this is going to be an important part of how you recruit and retain, how you value your employees in a different way than, because it's not all dollars and cents. It's going to be it's going to be a number of other factors. What would be what would you leave people with that have watched this session with us today?
Well, the first thing that I would say is do the love it, loathe it activity. Actually, like go through and do that before you roll it out or put it out there to the rest of the team and stuff like that. Get it working for you. It's a relatively simple thing to do. It takes time to kind of get all the activities down, but the ability to then kind of look at how do I reduce the amount that I've got over here and how do I intentionally put that to use in my love it activities. But do it, and the more you do it, the more you're going to go, wow, this really, this has improved my life, this has improved my role, this has improved my engagement and my performance and everything else of that. And then as that happens, it's to really look at it and be the courageous leader and say, I got to bring this out to my team and help them be the best that they can be, and help them to be their best selves. With those two things, you're really going to create an environment within your team, within your organization that is going to retain better, that is going to drive performance better and engage people and culture. So.
Listen, that's awesome. Thanks so much for spending time with us today. We are out of time for today's session. Mike, I really appreciate you joining us. Know how busy you are. Keep up the great work. And I know you're very involved in the community in a variety of organizations. So thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. We are out of time for today. As I said, thank you. I want to give one more shout out and thanks to our many partners, in particular, our title sponsor for the series, which is Manulife, our platinum sponsor for the series, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, and April's sponsor, the Region of Waterloo. And finally, to all of you for joining us today. As a reminder, we do host a new business success series every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Join us next week for a conversation on health equity. Dr. Neil Area, a local family physician at the Center for Family Medicine, and Wajma Ataya, Director of Community Initiatives with the Center for Family Medicine, join us as guests for an important conversation around health equity and addressing the gaps in our healthcare system. Access to healthcare for all community members is critical to a thriving and healthy community. To register to find out more about about other upcoming events, please visit us at greaterkwchamber.com. Please do share this series with your friends and colleagues. Join us every Wednesday afternoon for another edition of the Business Success Series, brought to you by Manulife. Because if it's Wednesday, it is the Business Success Series. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.